I'm Benjamin Anthony of the Miriam Institute. I'm born and raised in the UK, moved to and live in the State of Israel, had the high privilege of serving in the Israel Defense Forces, and I've lectured about my military experiences throughout the English-speaking world. This is my TV show, Israel Outside In.
In part 1 of this fascinating interview with the former Surgeon General of the Israel Defense Forces, I asked him about his parents, his life growing up in the village of Horfesh, his leadership of the IDF's life-saving treatment of the victims of natural disasters around the world, and more. And now, the two of us continue our conversation, focusing upon his treatment of Syrian refugees fleeing toward Israel to escape the ongoing Syrian civil war.
So I want to talk now about another situation in which you took a leadership role, and that's in March 2011. The Syrian civil war breaks out, and it's an enduring war that continues to this day. It still hasn't come to an end, and it's a terribly costly war and a terribly vicious war. But as I understand it, between March 2013 and September 2015 rather, you established a field hospital in northern Israel for the treatment of wounded Syrians who were fleeing that civil war and who were doing so in the face of such harm, such injury, such devastation, that they were willing to flee to what they viewed as an enemy state. It is technically an enemy state, the state of Israel, in order to pursue a healing, a recovery at all costs, potentially at the cost of their very lives in their understanding of the dynamic between Israel and Syria. The Syrian civil war is one that's killed at least, I believe, 400,000 civilians to this date, at least. The State of Israel has played a role under your leadership in treating some of the most severely injured Syrians. How did you come to the decision to establish that field hospital, and what were some of the dangers and considerations of treatment and repatriation of these Syrian patients?
It's one of the amazing things that the State of Israel Medical Corps did during the years. As I mentioned, it wasn't the first humanitarian mission, but it was the most unique humanitarian mission done by the State of Israel ever. And one of the unique things that actually we are talking about a hostile border, and we are talking about a continuity of taking care of these casualties. And actually, the date you mentioned, the March 2013, it's the date that we established the field hospital. But you can go a month earlier to February, actually the 16th of February 2013, when the first Syrians came to the border. 7 Syrians came to the border seeking for this treatment that you mentioned. And at that point, it was more than half a year that the civil war was in Syria. So during this period, we thought that probably part of them will seek treatment for us, but it's a hostile border. And actually, you have to understand that I was in the north. I was in the Golan Heights division in 2006. That means 7 years before that point. And if at that time you could ask me about treating the Syrians, I could say you are hallucination. So there was no chance of establishing such a field hospital or such a treatment for Syrians, because it's a totally hostile border. And actually, if the Syrians are crossing these borders, they will be killed by the Israeli. And if the Israelis are crossing these borders, they will be killed by the Syrians. Absolutely. And at that point of February 2013, we realized that part of the Syrians, especially those who are living beside the border, they have nothing to lose. Either they stay at their own homes and they were killed or died from their injuries, or they are deciding to move to the west, as I said, to the west, towards the Israeli border, hoping that probably the Israeli people will decide not to kill them, but to treat them. And they were right. We cannot see, we as an Israeli people, we as a medical corps, we cannot see a human being suffering who needs our help, and we stand aside. And this is exactly what we did. So the first 7 Syrians were treated on the border. And I remember a conversation with my commander that time, with the commander of the Northern Command. Nowadays he's a member of Knesset, Yair Golan.
He went on to become the Deputy Chief of Staff of the IDF.
Absolutely, after that position. And I remember that I asked him, what shall I do with these 7 Syrians that I was treating them on the border? My teams were treating them on the border. And I said, in a normal situation, I would not ask you, I will transfer them to the hospital. And he asked me only one question. What will happen to these people if we are not transferring them to the hospital? I said, for sure, part of them will die. I said, for sure, because it was in February in the Golan Heights, and they were suffering not only from serious injuries, but part of them were suffering also from hypothermia. So I told him that if we are not transferring them immediately to the hospital, part of them will die. And then within a second, he told me, go ahead. And since then, we realized that if more Syrians will come to the border, we have to arrange to establish a holistic solution. And that was the reason that actually we started building and thinking about the hospital, the field hospital in the border. And we decided to put this field hospital just on the border in order to help these Syrians coming to the border, treating on the hospital, and part of them even they can swear that they didn't enter Israel. Okay, so actually they were treated on the field hospital just on the border, and actually we kept this mission as a secret mission for almost 6 months. And why secret? Because we were afraid of their lives, upon their return to Syria.
Not because of their injuries.
Absolutely.
You were afraid about their lives, not because of their injuries when they went back to Syria, but would they not be prosecuted or persecuted or killed because they'd crossed into Israel?
They went to the country of the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that actually in the first 6 months, I remember the graph of the numbers of Syrians coming to Israel. It was 7 in the first month, and it was 26 in the second month. And I remember during the 4th or 5th month, we reached more than 100 Syrians who were treated in Israel, in this field hospital, and part of them were transferred to the hospitals in a secret mission. Not because we were afraid of the Israeli people that will know that we are treating Syrians. Absolutely not. We were afraid of what will happen to these Syrians when they come back to Syria. So actually we kept this mission almost for 6 months. And I remember by September 2013, when we treated more than 500 Syrians at that point, we decided it's no more a secret. And at that point, we actually knew that the people in Israel and in other places in the world knew that the state of Israel is treating Syrians.
And this is an amazing act of humanitarian care, because when you say that the Syrians were taken to Israeli hospitals, these were not Israeli military hospitals. These are because Israel at that time didn't have military hospitals. These were civilian hospitals, meaning the beds that are in Israeli hospitals, those are assigned and taken up by Syrian civilians.
Yeah.
What made you decide that that was the right course of action? It seems like something that one would take for granted, but it's not simple, is it?
Again, I think it's the power of the state of Israel that in these situations we are not talking about my grandfather was supposed to have an operation in the hospital, and the operation was postponed because of the Syrian coming to the hospital. Actually, the citizens, especially in the north part of Israel, because actually most of the Syrians were treated in the north part of Israel. Most of them were treated in Haria Hospital, in Tzfat Hospital, Ziv Tzfat Hospital, and other. So the people in the north knew that actually the state of Israel has a mission to treat these Syrians, even if this mission means that the extra bed that they have in the hospital in these days is not for my family, it's for somebody from the outer country. And it's amazing. It's much more than going to Haiti or Nepal, because it's in Haiti or Nepal or other missions, it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and that's it. And in this mission, it continued for years. So the hospitals in the north knew that part of their beds are, let's say, kept for the Syrian people. But I can tell you that none of the Syrian injuries were refused of treatment in the hospitals of Israel. So I think you told me before about what is being Israeli, is being proud of what the state of Israel is doing.
It absolutely it is. It's very apparent, and I want to actually ask you a question that I wasn't going to ask you, but I'm going to lead off what you just said. I remember when we had the privilege of bringing you to lecture at key leading medical universities, medical schools, and medical facilities in the United States of America. One of those places, I wasn't present, but I saw the photographs and I heard about it afterwards, was Boston University Medical Center. And you stood there as an officer in uniform, speaking about Israel's humanitarian missions. And as you did so, there were protesters around the perimeter of the room holding up signs, which included signs that said, for example, "Stop telling us about Israel's humanitarian missions when you are harvesting the organs of Palestinians." And you continued undeterred, you spoke, you pressed your truth forward, and the signs actually came down. The people didn't leave the room. The signs came down and they stood and listened to you. When you have truth on your side, does that make you fearless as a commander, as a leader, as a representative of Israel?
I will never forget this the scenario that you mentioned before. I think the strength of the situation is the fact that I'm not telling a story. I think a fact. I was there. I treated. I saved the lives. I transferred them from one position to the other. So, and since I'm not a psychiatric patient, and I'm still aware, so this is probably the strength of what I said and what I believe in. And probably that was the real reason that I continued telling not the story, the truth. And I think this is probably one of the things that I feel that I can read a book and tell you about what is written in the book. I can teach the students about how to do this thing or that thing. But when you are telling the story of what you did, of what your colleagues did, I think this is the real strength of that things. And that was the real reason that I continued talking about that. And I'm very happy that these signs were putting down, whether they were convinced of what I did or not, doesn't matter. But the fact that the others didn't go out and they continue listening to me, I think this is the strength of what I did.
It's a really remarkable situation that took place on that campus, and there are other examples of you giving testimony in places where people would think that it's next to impossible. You are a maker of history in your own way. You really are. There are a number of milestones in your life that are nothing short of historic. One of those is that in March, I believe, 2019, you gave testimony in a venue that is oftentimes correctly portrayed as being hostile towards the state of Israel. I'm referring to the United Nations. You did that in uniform.
Yeah.
Tell us about what that mission was and what you said there.
Mr. Tarif Bader, Surgeon General of the Israel Defense Forces of Israel.
There was a General Assembly dedicated for peacekeepers. And I was asked by the State of Israel to be the representative of the State of Israel in this assembly. And it was a great honor for me. A great honor for me as Tarif, a great honor for me as a Druze, a great honor for me as an Israeli, and of course as an officer. It was the first time that an Israeli officer is standing at this amazing position at the United Nations instead of the green wall, and giving a statement with uniform, in uniform. And again, I think the strength of this statement was that I talked about things that we are doing. We are doing. Actually, we had a project a year before that, teaching the peacekeepers how to save lives. And again, it's amazing that you can translate what you did in the field to an official statement of the State of Israel at this amazing position. So it was very unique. And I remember that there was a discussion whether the representative of Arabic countries will leave the hall, and it was amazing that most of them continue to be there. So
I'm not surprised. I'm sure that what you had to impart was compelling, and I know that you'll have done it with aplomb, as you always do. You know, Tarif, being a leader is what I would say, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy, and it requires certain principles. If you were to sum it up, or sum them up, what are some of your principles of good leadership?
A good leadership have to believe in himself. A good leadership have to work for the good of the others and not for the personal things. And you have to be brave. You do not have to go against others, but sometimes you have to put your ideas and what you think, even if it's not in the mainstream. And a good leadership is the one who can do the things in the right way that he thinks that it's the right way. You cannot wait and choose the best way and continue waiting. One of the things that leadership has to do is to decide. And it's sometimes they say that it's better a bad decision than no decision. And if you are brave enough, if you are understanding the situation, and you deciding, even if your decision, in a retrospect, wasn't the best decision that you did, you have to decide. And if you will wait until all of the participants will be pleased by your decision, you are not a good commander. You have to decide at the right time, because I think commander has to decide. A leader has to decide, and he is choosing to be a leader because he can do the right decisions in the difficult situations.
You once told me that being a leader is not like being at a traffic circle. Tell me that. I'd like our viewers to hear that example.
In a traffic circle, you can move again and again without deciding. But you will get to no place. And I believe that life is like a cross-section that you have to decide whether to the right or the left, or to go continue. And if you decide to go to one direction, you will arrive. And if you did the right decision, you will arrive to the right place. But if you are continue moving in a circle, you will never arrive. Neither to the right position, to the right place, nor to the wrong place.
I'll think of that every time I come to a traffic circle. So I just want a few brief questions, and then I have a final one after that. But these next ones are brief, short questions for you. And I should say, you didn't ask to see any questions in advance of this interview. So thank you very, very much for taking these questions unseen. Still on the theme of leadership, I want to go through some stages in your life. What are some of the basic leadership lessons that you learned from your parents?
Believe in others, respect others, and believe in yourself.
What are the leadership lessons that you learned from your commanders that made you such a distinguished officer?
Be brave and believe in yourself.
So far, believing in yourself is common to the first two.
Yeah.
And the third question that I had is, what are the leadership lessons that you learned as the Surgeon General of the Israel Defense Forces that translated into your current role as the CEO of Kaplan Medical Center, and in fact can translate into any area of leadership whatsoever?
In general, there is there is a difference between commanding and managing. But I think the main principles are the same. And one of the principles is taking care of people. One of the principles is having a vision, and not only dealing with the daily manners. And I can tell you that while I have to take care of the foolish things, the simplest things, in either as a Surgeon General or as a CEO, I have to put part-time in my schedule to think about things for the future. And I think one of the things that commander or leader has to do is to think much more the period that he or she is in his position. As a Surgeon General, I initiated a couple of programs that I was sure that I will never see the fruits of these programs while I'm serving as a Surgeon General. And even though I did that, because it was my commitment, my obligation, that I have to think even further than the period of my period as a Surgeon General. And this is exactly what I have to do as a CEO. while taking care of the hospital, while taking of the department, while talking with the physicians, I have to put on my table some of the plans that I see, how I see the Capital Medical Hospital or the Hartsfield Hospital, not only during my period, whether it's 4 years or 8 years or 10 years. Because now I have the responsibility not only of taking care of the hospital, but of planning for the future. And this is what I'm doing.
So my final 3 questions, Tarif. There are a lot of young potential leaders who are afraid or who are put off by the idea of entering the public sector because it's vicious. People are slandered, names are sullied, people are criticized. But I feel that we lose a lot of great leaders because of that fear. What would you advise to a young leader who wants to give more of themselves but is somewhat deterred by all of these unnecessary attacks and the unpleasantness?
Unfortunately, I do not have a magic solution for that. But probably the most powerful thing that I can say that you have to like it. There are a lot of things that you can do in the private sections. And I can tell you about myself that being, for example, a pediatrician in Horfesh, I can tell you for sure that I can get a better salary than what I'm getting as a CEO of the Kaplan Medical Center. But I think the power of doing, the power of influencing, the power of improving, the power of thinking much bigger than the small position, the position that you are in, I think this is what motivates me, and this is probably what have to motivate others to go to a leadership in general and in public positions in private. But if you do not like it, it's very difficult to continue working there.
Now, I happen to know that as a young medical officer, you believed that one day you would become that which you became, which was the Surgeon General of the IDF. Now, there were many adventures along the way, many challenges along the way. How did you make sure that you stayed on that path toward realizing that ambition despite those challenges?
Again, to believe in yourself. And I think another thing is that even if things are going on the wrong way and you are not achieving what you thought to achieve, don't forgive. And I think this is what I did. So I can tell you that during my career, which is a wonderful career, more than once that I wanted to go to one position and I didn't get it. And this, let's say, this situation that I thought that this is the next position that I'm going to be there, gave me more motivation to work harder for the next time and to continue struggling to get probably another position. And sometimes, fortunately, sometimes the other position that I got was much better than the one I lost. So, and I think it's, there's a phrase saying that, there's a phrase, winners never quit and quitters never win. And I think I didn't know this phrase before I act like this. And I believe that if you continue working hard and you put the target that you want to reach, so you can do that. It wasn't obvious that I'm going to be the Surgeon General. Absolutely not.
No.
I remember when we were in the state and was the Deputy Surgeon General, I said, "Oh, I would like to be the Surgeon General.
I remember that well.
Yeah, I think let's say that I believed at that time that I'm actually a wonderful candidate of being the Surgeon General. And I think that our lives are a lot of hills. And the more you are climbing, you see the new hill. And actually, sometimes when I was a young officer, actually being a Surgeon General for me, it was beyond the ocean. And when I was climbing on the career with the positions, and actually more and more, I see, okay, I'm now a major. Now I'm a lieutenant colonel. Okay, so it's so something, I can do something bigger than that. I can tell you that when I was a young officer, I wanted to be probably a major or a lieutenant colonel. And then when I was a lieutenant colonel, I said, okay, I can be a colonel, and etc. So I think this is a great thing that you. It's not like you have to believe in your position. You have to work hard during your position, but it's okay that while you are working hard in your position, to see what are the other things that you can do.
So that's a perfect jumping off point for my final question.
Why?
Climbing hills. You've done so much. You've been the first member of the Druze community to be the Surgeon General of the Israel Defense Forces. You've addressed yourself at the podium of the most international platform in the world, the United Nations. You are the CEO of a major medical facility, and you have not stopped climbing. It's very clear to me that you are still not done with the climb. What's next for you, Tarif? I personally would like to see you in a diplomatic capacity representing the State of Israel, again, probably at that international podium over there in the United Nations. What's next for you? What's your vision for the next 10 years or beyond your current position?
It's the last question, but it's the last question?
It's my last question.
It's the last question, but it's the most hard question, the hardest question. It's still early, I don't know. But I'm sure that it's not my last position. I just celebrated a year in this position, and I'm working hard to move things on for the Kaplan Medical Center and for the Hartsfield hospitals and for the population in that area. And this is what I promised them, to do all my best, including all the relations that I have in Israel and abroad, in order to improve the medical care of the population there, in order to improve the situation and the medical care in these hospitals. And as I said, it's not the last position, but I'm still, let's say, enjoying the hills that I already see. I haven't decided yet.
Well, I can tell you, it's again, as I began, so I'll finish. It's a tremendous honor for me personally to be able to sit with you today, for you to be invited into your home, to be hosted by you, to learn from you. I have certainly learned from you. You've continued my education. I know you will have educated and imparted your wisdom onto everybody who watches this interview. And I also will share with you that every time I've heard you speak, I end up walking a little bit taller and with a little bit of a spring in my step as a proud Israeli, to know that we have leaders such as you in this country who are serving a greater good with every breath that they take and with every fibre of their being. So thank you so very much, Tarif. I really, really appreciate it, and I always will. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. It's always an honor for me to talk to you, and you are a real friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
בבקשה.
פנטסטיק, תודה רבה.
לבריאות.
מעולה, תודה רבה. תודה, תמיד. Well, what a fabulous conversation that was with Brigadier-General Dr. Tarif Bader, the former Surgeon General of the Israel Defense Forces. And I want to reiterate my thanks to him, his wife Janan, and their entire family for their hospitality, and of course for the candor with which he responded to my questions. And as I mentally digest the subject matters that we touched upon, including his upbringing in the Druze community, including his role as the Surgeon General of the Israel Defense Forces and his leadership roles, particularly as Deputy Head of Mission to Haiti following the disastrous earthquake there, as Head of Aid Mission to Nepal following the earthquake there, and also his establishment of the field hospital to treat wounded Syrians harmed during the course of the horrific events of the ongoing Syrian civil war, I'd like to give myself something to digest physically. So when you come to the Middle East, you can't really call it a deep dive into the Middle East without experiencing and tasting the foods, particularly the hummus. Now, in many Jewish homes throughout the world, but not in the Middle East, hummus is a side dish. It's almost a condiment served alongside the main dish. But here in Israel, it's the main dish itself. And I'm very pleased to be here at Hummus Jubran, where together with his wife Akhlam, Jubran runs this establishment, and I've ordered quite a feast for myself. I've begun with the hummus basar, which is hummus and ground beef. Now I want to tell you, I don't know which part of the cow is on this plate, but I can tell you all of that which is on this plate is going into my stomach very, very soon. Together with that, we've got the ale gefen. Ale gefen are stuffed vine leaves with different kinds of rices and lemon and light spices. In the United States of America, you know the condiments that are served with the main dishes. You have ketchup and mayonnaise and mustard. Well, in the Middle East, we also have our own condiments. We have here the schug, which is a spicy dish. I'm going to stay away from that. And we also have this garlic sauce, which I'll be enjoying. And no Middle Eastern dish is complete without pickles, olives, tomatoes, and chili peppers. So this is the dish that I'll be having. If you do come to Horfesh, if you come to visit this Druze village, take a walk around, but as you do so, make sure that you make a stop at Hummus Jubran. You won't forget it. So I'm going to dig in here. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of the show, and I look forward to showing you more about Israel in the coming episodes. פנטסטי. תודה, היה ממש טעים, ואני לא אומר בגלל המצלמה, ממש נהניתי, תודה רבה. תודה, תודה רבה.
Don't miss the next episode of Israel Outside In, where I'll be joining the organization Hamaslul, or Pathway, the military preparation course for Israeli teens who are training to give the best of themselves to Israel during their service in the Israel Defense Forces. Filmed on the beaches of the Jewish state, I'll be put through my paces by the co-founder of the organization, Roy Peleg, along with Israel's future commanders, and I'll be asking him and them what motivates them to give everything that they have to offer toward the defense and security of the one and only Jewish state. That's next time, right here on Israel Outside In. If you're interested in investing in the next generation of Israeli and American leadership for the benefit of both countries and the relationship between the two, then please take the time to learn about and to invest in the Miriam Institute annual Israel Strategy and Policy Tour, or ISAP, as we like to call it.
First off, I never thought I would be in Israel. When I saw that this was an opportunity, I put my name.
We really got to see the entire country in 10 days, experience the culture.
The Jewish culture was really impressive for me.
Try to get people to love each other and not to hate each other.
Really impressed by all of the different types of speakers we were able to hear.
It's for cadets, future and current officers of the United States Armed Forces, including the Army, Navy, Air Force and Marine Corps. The ISAP tour brings the best and the brightest active and incoming officers to Poland for a 3-day tour of the Polish death camps, followed by a 12-day, once-in-a-lifetime tour of the State of Israel that crisscrosses the Jewish state. 100% of the participants will go on to serve in positions of leadership within the military and beyond. The ISAP tour is your way to invest in the leaders of today and tomorrow, now.
So happy that I was selected and I was able to come. Thank you so much for the opportunity and everything you guys have done here. It's really awesome.
For the sake of the US-Israel relationship, please visit the website today at www.miriaminstitute.org/ISAP.